Today I wanted to talk about one element of physical media collecting, more specifically TV shows and movies for the case of this video, that I don't think is really discussed quite enough, and that is downsizing or limiting the size of your collection due to space. That is one of the biggest issues that I hear a lot of people talk about and watching a lot of people's collection videos, their library tours, their theater room tours. I love watching that kind of stuff and seeing the creativity and the different styles and how people set things up, because everyone's going to have a different take, and I like seeing that. But one thing that does come up all the time is the decision-making process and the frustration of having a set space, a limited space, and having that be one of the greatest factors in keeping a collection down to a certain size. Even if you have access to a lot of really cheap movies, or you have the financial means to buy like whatever, sometimes it comes down to, do I really want to live in this cramped space, like in this theater room or living room or wherever you have things set up? Do I really want to have everything so crammed in there that it's hard to get to everything, or do I want to keep things a little more downsized and save a little more space, a little more manageable? And there's so many factors going into how you can go beyond that. One, the addiction issue of, like, there's so much content out there that we have, over 100 years worth of movies, and we're looking at over 80 years worth of television broadcasts, and now there's so much access to stuff from all around the world, especially with a lot of region-free media and easy accessibility of region-free DVD and Blu-ray players and things, and so many decades of various forms of content: Laserdisc, VHS, Betamax, VCD, CED, DVD, HD DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, everything is out there, that it can be overwhelming and easy to just kind of get everything and lose focus of, I can't realistically actually watch all of this. And of course the space issue. And so today I want to go over, just again through some of my own experience, how to kind of go through that process, because I know for a lot of people it is, and for myself in some cases, can be something that's more challenging to kind of really figure out and adhere to and decide, and just some space saving tips and things like that. For me, I do a lot of collection videos showing off larger, broader collections of some very favorite special things, but I don't go over very frequently, aside from my wife and I do an annual thing for our Blu-ray collection. Don't really haven't yet tackled a lot of the other formats, but there can be the perception that for a lot of people, myself included, a lot of collectors, that you have every movie of 10 different copies of, and all these different formats. Most stuff we have just one copy of. Typically just a standard DVD or just a standard Blu-ray for vast majority of things. And that's something that is also a hurdle if you are into many different forms of retro media, speaking specifically to people that are into that, where you might end up having, there was a YouTuber who doesn't live that far from me, I've watched his videos for a long time, and he downsized his collection by like 70% when he realized at one point that he's like, you know what, I love the movie Dumbo, but I don't need 3 different VHS copies, a Betamax, a Laserdisc, 2 different DVD copies, a Blu-ray. Like, you don't need all those. So one thing that, as you like getting into all those formats, that can very easily happen. And for me, I am one of those people. I have all those old formats, and that's part of the fascination for me, is the actual physical technology and the experience of the physical item. So for me, a lot of times I have in my mind a lot of very limited, these are the types of movies or shows or whatever that I will do that with, where I'll have maybe examples on many different formats. And even over the years, I've sold a lot of older ones where it's like, the VHS maybe is gone now from the collection, as we have, the DVD Blu-ray combo kind of thing. So trying to think as you go through and limit those items, those specific favorite things. Try and be very focused in that area, and just pick a few things that you do that with, and the temptation to find all these cool things, because it's cool to see them. And I run into that a lot because I sell a lot of media, so I run into, for inventory for my store on eBay and Mercari and Etsy, I get movies for $3 down to sometimes 5 cents a piece. So it's very easy to get into that temptation, and that's part of the process, is really realizing, what are you actually going to physically have time to watch. And part of that comes down to one of my favorite things to look for. A lot of these best of type collections, TV Guide, Spotlight, we'll look at a few of these here. And what's great for that is there are a bunch of TV shows that I love and I will watch over and over again, and favorite movies and content that I will re-experience over and over again endlessly till the day that I drop dead. But then there are a lot of other things where it's like, I would occasionally like to rewatch an episode of that, but will I ever watch 8 seasons of that show? No, never. And there are a lot of shows like that, and that's what, and some of them, it can be easy to think, I'll just rely on streaming for that, but I like to have the physical stuff. And sometimes you look at some of these collections and it's like, well, one of these shows is on Netflix, another's on Hulu, another's on Tubi, another's on Roku, and it's just crazy. And these are great to look out for, good space-saving things where instead of having, 8 seasons of The Cosby Show and however many, 10 seasons of Ozzie and Harriet and Bonanza, Married with Children, all these different shows, if you're not going to realistically, if it's not one of your absolute favorites you're going to rewatch over and over again, you're really wasting a lot of space by having these complete series collection sets for those things that you're probably never going to really go through the whole thing again. So I really like, one thing, the TV Guide Spotlights. I like them because they're a great way of accessing a lot of those shows, and they're based on themes. So like here I have TV's Greatest Dads, TV's Greatest Moms, and Christmas episode collection. There are a bunch of these. They have usually one to two episodes a piece of a variety of shows from many different decades, and that's a great way of like, I have just 1 or 2 episodes when I want to watch them. Another thing is these fan favorites and television favorite lines. The same concept where, like Frasier, it's not one of my favorite sitcoms. I watched it when it was coming out, and it's one of those where maybe occasionally I want to rewatch an episode, but not very often, so it's great to have something like that in there. Night Court is another great example of that. Best of Whose Line Is It Anyway? They have these 80s collection ones, another Best of the 80s, Knight Rider, Miami Vice. Again, shows that I might one afternoon or one evening want to go down memory lane and watch a few episodes of that show. Maybe I have the theme song stuck in my head, and I would like to do that, but I'm never realistically going to sit and rewatch the whole thing. Great to have little things like that in the collection. That's a great way of saving a lot of space instead of having 100 different TV shows, complete sets, and you're never going to actually watch them. There's also, for much older TV shows, I love a lot of 50s, 60s sitcoms. For a bunch of those, some of them are public domain, some are very easy to get. So there's a ton of these larger collections out here. This one has 45 episodes on just one little spot on the shelf, and you get a variety of different shows, again, that are in that vein of stuff I wouldn't necessarily rewatch the entirety of. The Dennis O'Keefe Show, or the Buster Keaton Show, or the Ed Wynn Show, or Lassie, and we have some Sea Hunt, Sky King, Petticoat Junction, good variety there. Then for those shows that you will watch the whole thing, it is one of your favorites, or it has this kind of comfort appeal, there are a lot of different options, especially now, and I feel like if you've been collecting for a long time and maybe years ago bought the seasons individually as they came out, there are a lot of different shows. It's very, very common now for these complete series sets. And look how much smaller they are compared to, just a regular DVD. Maybe to save space, go ahead and replace or look out. You're just buying a season for the first, a series for the first time. For these sets, there's a bunch of different ones. Example of that one, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Here's probably my favorite example. Look at the size of this set. This is very small. The MASH set. It's all 11 seasons, and we're talking real seasons, the way things used to be, where it's close to 30 episodes versus like 6 now. So 11 seasons plus the original movie and a bunch of bonus content in one nice little set. So look out for those as a space saver. Just be aware that occasionally, like this Hercules set, sometimes they might not be up to the same level of quality as some of the older sets. Some of them, they're just reprints of the exact same DVDs, the same discs, whatever. But just be aware, sometimes it might not be quite the same quality, but for space saving, that's a really good option. And there's a lot of good examples like that from movies as well. Here's a great one I just pulled off the shelf because this is like probably one of the largest ones. This Arnold 6-film collection. Instead of having them individually, there are 2 on here, Total Recall and Terminator 2, that then, those are my favorites, so I have one other separate copy of those, and all the other ones just have in this 6-pack set, and it saves a lot of space. So it's not about completely avoiding those big, beautiful collector's sets, because that's part of what we love about the physical media realm and getting this kind of stuff, but limiting it, really trying to think in terms of keeping things small, space-wise, and limiting this kind of stuff to the absolute favorites. That way you can have those things, and when you have a smaller selection of this kind of stuff, I also feel like you appreciate them more individually. And when you really limit it to not just, hey, it's a cool looking cover, but not one of my favorite movies, and you have it in a pack of 12, limiting it to like your absolute favorite kind of stuff, I think makes them more special, and again, you save all that space. And another big factor that I know weighs heavily on the minds of a lot of media collectors, especially for older stuff, is the preservation issue as well, wanting to make sure you have a physical copy that you control of certain things, and that can add to that, to get things more out of hand again, where a lot of movies or TV shows are released and re-released just about every time there's a new format. Some things at every 5 years, like something Wizard of Oz, endlessly, and that of course can attribute as well to making a collection balloon, getting things larger, and getting into that mindset and getting rid of, in some cases it can almost be a feeling of anxiety, a feeling of missing out, a fear of losing stuff in the future. And I know that's a real issue that's not talked about a lot, that does exist within a lot of people that collect a lot of physical media. There can be that anxiety issue, that sense of loss of a certain thing that's very special to you, rather than just standard, like, I'm just gonna have fun and watch a movie. It's something that feels very personal and like something you don't want to lose. And really, again, just like having those favorites that you have multiple, collector's editions, whatever, limiting the numbers of things, really thinking about what means the most to you. The same thing with that factor, realizing that there's a lot out there, there's a lot of people that are doing real preservation online. There's no way to physically build for yourself a library that preserves everything you could ever want. It's just not a feasible thing, especially in the consideration of space. So again, limiting that mindset down to what are my, not just my absolute favorites, but what am I going to rewatch? Again, with a lot of these TV shows, not realistically going to go back and rewatch every season of certain shows. It's nice to have just one little selection, and then I'm done. And think about what are those ones that you have that you actually go to physically and rewatch. Think about what your viewing patterns are. Like for me, again, the example for me, there are a lot of shows and movies that I like to occasionally, sometimes once every decade, sometimes once a year, or whatever, pop out and watch. But what are the day-to-day things? For me, my TV movie viewing habits are most evenings for an hour or two before going to bed, I like to watch something that is usually comforting and familiar, a favorite, and then watch new things just every once in a while. And then the other thing is, while I'm working in some capacities, part of what I do with reselling and selling lots of media is there are times where you're literally just listing things in the store, or just packing 30, 40 orders sometimes over a busy weekend for a long period of time, but those aren't really mentally taxing or very focus heavy type activities, so I can kind of watch TV while I'm doing those. So those two time frames are when I watch the most as far as movies and television. I have to think about, what am I actually physically in my day-to-day doing? How often am I doing I'm sitting there and for the first time, whatever, putting in a criterion of a movie and really analyzing it and focusing on it and listening to the commentaries and reading the essay that comes with it, how often am I doing that? And those are the kind of things I might just have one copy of, versus how much am I doing the revisiting these very specific old favorites. And I think for a lot of people, you haven't taken the time to really do that, and you think of like what I want to watch versus realistically what do I typically do in my day-to-day. So for me, I kind of narrow that down to, all right, these are the shows where I do have the multiple re-releases and the collections of, because those are the things I will realistically revisit. And sometimes it might be surprising to you, because there might be some real nostalgic childhood favorites that you like, have a great love for, but when you really think about it and look back, how often do you really rewatch it? You have to really think about that. So for me, here are some of the shows that I have the larger collections of, because that is what I do, what I actually physically rewatch. Of course, all the Star Treks, I have a whole channel devoted to Star Trek. I always watch a lot of Star Trek, and I want to be Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and both Hercules and Xena. Those are the ones that I tend to rewatch a lot of, maybe while I'm working. A lot of Star Trek, or like Buffy or Xena or Hercules. Those are the kind of shows that when I'm sometimes just packing up packages or listening things for like 3 or 4 hours, that might be something that I have on. And then in the evenings, to relax, like what do I tend to just, when I have had it, even like a long day or even a great easy day, when I just want to chill for a little bit before going to bed, what am I realistically watching the most of? And it tends to be either Star Trek or just a handful of these same shows over and over again are the majority of the time. And then of course you get the other stuff that enters in the mix every once in a while, but I'd say at least 4 or 5 nights out of the week I'm watching 1 or 2 episodes of Star Trek or MASH or The Dick Van Dyke Show, I Love Lucy, Bewitched, or Mary Tyler Moore. Those are the ones that, looking back most nights throughout the week, unless I'm watching something kind of oddball or new, those are the ones that I'm spending the most time revisiting. So those are the ones that I've limited myself to having really a larger collection of, or those re-releases. So really what it's all about is identifying your situation, identifying your space, and really realistically thinking about, what do I have just because I think it's cool, versus what do I have because it actually has a deep-seated meaning for me and I'm going to use it and rewatch it a lot. The other thing too with the rewatch, one major thing is that I don't keep things in the collection just for posterity, or because I think I should have it in the collection. I see a lot of people talk about that when they go through their collections, where they have certain, well, this is on the top 100 movies of all time list, and not my personal favorites, but I should have it. Why? It's taking up space. Like, there are some great classic movies that I love and have in my collection. There are other ones where I saw it once when I was younger, I rewatched it when I was a little bit older, and I probably won't ever revisit it again. So it goes away, it comes off the shelf, and there's a lot of movies like that where you tailor it to just what you love, what you're going to watch, what you're going to rewatch, and if it's just something that you have just to have, maybe you shouldn't have it. Maybe get it out. Maybe you can sell it off and have some extra cash on hand, or get that one thing for your collection you've been looking for. Save up that way. But yeah, just tailoring things, really, I guess, narrowing down what it means the most to you, thinking about, not caring about what you're showing off on YouTube or whatever, what you think you should have in your collection, or just think about what you are physically going to use, and look for ways for a lot of shows to find either something that takes up a little less shelf space, or find that thing that maybe you don't need every season of the show, you just want a little collection of. Just think in those terms and be realistic.